I'm so excited you guys are here because I'm opening my doors to my one-on-one coaching program, Find Your Yes, because we all deserve to live a life that feels like a hell yes. Women are leaders, and leadership is found in entrepreneurship, leading teams within a business, volunteer organizations, your community, and at home with your family. Whether you're desiring to make a transformation into leadership or you want to up-level your skills to become a more effective leader, this program is for you. I've been leading at work and at home for over a decade, and this is what I know. It wasn't until I did the inner work that I personally needed to do that my leadership skills really improved. And that's why I created the Find Your Yes program. So you don't have to do the inner work alone. As someone who has been there, I will guide you as we work through your shadows, heal past traumas, overcome self-limiting beliefs, and watch you transform from the inside out. So if you're ready to create a life that feels like a hell yes, head over to www.jessiblois.com/contact to book a call, or head over to my Instagram @JessieBlois and send me a DM. I'm so excited to connect and to find your yes. I'm thrilled to have Lainie Donnell here with me today. Lainie is an educational therapist and a college counselor, and she has an incredible background and story that I'm so excited for you to share with us. Thank you so much for being here, Lainie.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am thrilled. Okay, so a little bit of background on you is you live in Thousand Oaks, you're married, you have 2 kiddos, your master's degree is in special education, and you have multiple subjects, and you're in special education and her multiple subjects in educational specialist teaching credential.
Yes.
So much. You work with students with and without learning differences to help them overcome their learning struggles and embrace their neurodiversity. You worked exclusively as an educational therapist and college counselor in private practice. And you focus on helping students develop, and I love this, self-advocacy and executive function skills, improve their reading and written expression skills, and gain entrance into the colleges and universities that meet their needs.
Yes.
You're also a board member and president of the Los Angeles branch of the International Dyslexia Association.
I'm not on the board anymore, but I was for years.
Okay, still big responsibility.
Yes, it was.
And you're currently also working with public and private schools,
Yes.
and giving workshops to students, parents, and teachers.
Yes, that's one of my absolute favorite things to do. There's another piece of my business. I work with a colleague and best friend, Liz Lutsky, and we do teacher trainings. And it's something that her and I are incredibly passionate about, pre-service teachers and making sure that they're doing the right thing in the classroom. So maybe one day we always say that we like to work our way out of a job.
Right.
And so that's ultimately the goal. You have the same goal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about getting these kiddos where they need to be, and they don't need our services anymore. But I love that you're starting with the teachers and giving them the information that they need to take care, because I mean, truth is, and I think everybody knows, all of our children are being taught to learn a certain way, and they don't all learn that way. Actually, my daughter's currently going through an assessment process so we can learn a little bit more about her learning style.
I wish every kid could get a neuropsych evaluation. I just think that it is so incredible. And I always think it's interesting because as adults, we're expected to specialize in something. As adults, we have, plumbers, and we have lawyers, and we have teachers, and we have speech and language pathologists and educational therapists. And we're supposed to, find our place in the world. But somehow in our K through 12 education, we're supposed to be somehow equally excellent at every single area and in the same way as everyone else. And we're not built that way. And it's a really antiquated way of thinking about kids. But it's what we have. And so we need to work with it. But I just always think it's so interesting, and I try to explain to my students that like every single person, whether they have a learning disability or not, has strengths and challenges, and that's how we wind up where we are as adults.
Right. I also think what's wild about our system is that around 18 to 20, we're supposed to pick what we want to do with the rest of our life.
I know.
So to me, I'm like, can we wait till the frontal cortex is developed? Right? Like
For my
it's just
population of students, when you look at my students with executive function issues, that prefrontal frontal cortex and frontal lobe, like all of that, on average, the statistics are you need to take that executive function and on average subtract 3 years. So if we're looking at, the what they say is the traditional female brain, they're saying that it's gonna mature sometime between 22 and 27, I think. And for boys, it's like 25 to like 30. But then you take anyone who struggles with executive function, and then you've got to subtract.
I could talk to you this entire hour about the fact that
Sorry.
when all that's happening, people are picking their careers and their partners, their
I know,
life partners.
I know. Soapbox.
It's
Go on forever.
I could go on forever and like make a huge like PSA.
I know.
I actually was joking around with someone yesterday and I was like, I want to have this huge movement where I'm talking to people from 19 to 25, where I'm like, during these years, you won't make a choice.
Right.
No choices to be made. Have
Right.
fun with someone, explore a career, live
Totally.
your life, but don't
Yeah.
make a commitment that's for the rest of your life. You just don't know.
And I'll make this last point, and I know you have like an agenda, but part of what I work with what I start out telling my students who come to me, well, any of my ed therapy students, especially the ones going on to college, but also the ones who come to me just for college counseling, I always, they say, oh, I want this major or I want that major. And I'm like, that's fine and good, but the goal is to get a 2-year or a 4-year degree, because
Right.
that's what puts you in the category of being able to get some sort of return on investment and get to some of the jobs that you want to get to. But in 2018, there was a statistic that like 73% of people who graduated with a degree did nothing in the field related to the 4-year degree that they had received.
Yeah.
So that statistic was in 2018. So I'm sure
Yeah.
that that's only increased. So I think
Yeah.
that it's so important
Right.
to know that, like, just go get the skill set of like learning how to be a student, learning how to be a little bit more independent, get focused on something that's interesting, but be willing to be flexible. So,
Right. I went through undergrad. I did a couple years at a community college. Then I did my undergrad. Then I went through a master's program. And when I got my master's, I was told by my professors, all this is you just got a license to learn.
yeah,
And it's so true. You don't learn how to do this career in the classroom. You learn how to do it on the job,
100%.
trial and error.
Even when I got my teaching credential, there was absolutely, I mean, not nothing, but there was very little that I learned within the walls of the university that
Mm-hmm.
like I needed to learn it in the classroom because I
Yeah,
was a
you're
classroom
getting your
for 8
degree to
years.
go figure it out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I know so much. And I don't know about you and the women that you spend most of your time with, but for me, and I've seen this happening around me, I turned 40 in March.
mm,
And something happens, guys, around this age, at least it's really happening for me, where you're kind of, and I'm also huge on self-development. So I've been doing this for years where I'm really learning myself.
yeah,
But you kind of realize, like, I want to live my life. I want my life to be like a fuck yeah, I want it to be everything I want. And
totally.
I don't think the life I've created is exactly that. So you start to like kind of move things around and switch
Yeah.
things up.
When I turned 40, I was elated. Like I felt like I had somehow made it to some point in my life that um I don't know. It was some milestone that was like the most thrilling thing to me. Like so much of my life, I've wanted to just be somewhere else at a different point. And
Mhm.
for some reason, when I turned 40, it felt like, oh my gosh, like I'm here. And then over the last few years, when I turned 45 this year, and it was really hard.
Oh,
That's
really?
it. 45 was like, uh, what? Like, how did I get, like, how am I 45? Like, time is just like marching on.
Yeah.
And it was that. It was like, am I doing everything I want to be doing? Am I taking advantage? Am I living in the moment? So I hear you. I totally hear what you're talking about. I think I came to that a little bit later.
A little bit later. And
Yeah.
the thing is, when you have these realizations, and that's why I wanted this podcast, and that's why I'm loving working with women and coaching on really doing that inner work and discovering who you are. Because when you start feeling like this isn't right, I want something more, I want something different, or I want to just add to my life, or something needs to be removed, it's not like you're like, and this is what it is, and I'm going to just do it, and
Not a
then I'm on my
destination.
way.
It's
No,
not a
it is
destination.
hard work.
Yeah.
It's really scary. It can
Yes.
be really lonely, but when you have this inner knowing that something needs to change, you can't not acknowledge it when it's really strong, but doing the work to achieve it,
Yeah. I
it
think
is,
while being a mother, though, also,
yeah.
and while being a mother and being a partner and like a contributing member of a household income,
Mhm.
and then additionally trying to do that self-discovery. And for
Yeah.
me, having ADHD, um, it's a challenge. It's a big
Yeah.
challenge having to.
Yeah. Right. And then as you're doing this self-discovery, a lot of people that have been your comfort zone,
Yeah.
you might realize like they're not adding to your life. They're actually taking, so now you're setting boundaries.
Oh
And
yeah,
while
that's the
there's
best part of getting older is the boundaries.
right, but when you're setting certain boundaries, you know they need to be there, but they it still hurts.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. So it's just it's so layered. And that's
Yes.
why I'm so happy that you're here to share your journey. Okay. So we could probably go on forever, but let's start back at the beginning because you have a really good story about your childhood and everything that was presented in front of you to get to where you are now is a story everybody should hear to be inspired by. So why don't you fill us in a little bit about
Okay. So I I'll start at the beginning.
start at the very
Um,
beginning.
when little Lainie was in school, um, I went to a progressive private school in North Hollywood, and it's where my brother went also. And I struggled. I struggled in a huge way. Um, and by second grade, I was tested. And at that time, I mean, that's like what, 80, 81 or something like, I mean, this
Yeah.
is, it's a different time. And in second grade, I was diagnosed with dyslexia and auditory and visual processing delays. And at that time, it was called like a learning disability in math in number sense. Today, it would be called dyscalculia or dyscalcula. I'm not sure how it actually is pronounced.
Okay.
And I was in my own group in all my classrooms, and I got pulled out by. I remember the PE
Hold
teacher was
on one second, Lainey. Oh, there you go. You froze for a second. Okay, so go ahead and I'll have that part edited. So go ahead and
okay.
say that again.
So the PE teacher was also the reading teacher, and I remember her coming to kind of pull me out to try and help me. At that time, I started working with a tutor outside of school who today would be considered an educational therapist. She was kind of at the forefront of starting that whole ed therapy movement. And I loved going to her because I felt really successful, but school was my nemesis. I faked illness. The nurse was my best friend. um, I went to the bathroom, all day long just to escape. I was, any number of students that you can imagine and that you hear about who struggle in school. And then by fourth grade, the school literally told my parents that they could not help me, and that they needed to find somewhere else for me to go. And it was, I mean, hard on so many levels. I think identity wise, though, like the damage was done. I felt horrible about myself. I had no self esteem. Um, I didn't feel like I had solid friends. I had two girls who I was friends with, who I'm still friends with to this day. But I don't, they're the only two at that time that I remember kind of reflecting on and being close with. When you look back um, at my like school evaluations, it talks all about how social I was and how many friends I had, which I thought was so interesting because reality really is perception. That,
Right.
like, however they were seeing me was not how I was feeling.
Right.
Uh, and to this day, people I know who I did go to school with would describe me in that way as well. But again, that's not how I
Do you
remember.
attribute that to just feeling such low self-esteem
Yeah.
across
And
the board that
isolation,
it just bled into other areas?
everything. It bled into
Isolation.
everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so they asked me to leave. And my brother, like I said, my brother was there. My whole
God, I
identity
mean,
was
that
changed.
alone.
I know. And, today it's so interesting because adults will be like, well, wasn't that a gift that they, admitted what they couldn't do and didn't pretend? And I'm like, that's yes, ultimately it was such a gift. However, it does not feel that way. The
To a child that can't comprehend what's
exactly,
going on. Yeah,
exactly. So
I mean,
at the time, a school from the East Coast called Landmark, that's in Beverly, Massachusetts, still to this day. They came out here and started a West Coast, not chapter. They started a West Coast campus, and at that time, if my parents had sent me to private school, the IEP system was set up in that you had to show like 3 years of consistent failure before you could qualify for an IEP. And I didn't, by fourth grade, I did not have 3 more years to lose. Um, and so my mom found this school and she got me enrolled. And, it was really the beginning of me learning how to learn. I always say that it was like a skills-based education, of course, curriculum. It was college prep and all of that, but the setting was I was in a classroom with, 8 to 10 other kids with all the teachers had, you know, um, special ed credentials, and there were teaching
yeah.
assistants, and there was a tutorial period where I got one-on-one time every single day. And, by the end of fifth grade, I was reading. Um,
So I just want to go back for a second. For people that don't know, an IEP is an individualized education plan. This is a legal document that follows the child when they need certain services that the school's mandated
Public
to,
schools, public
yeah,
schools.
only public schools. The public school is mandated to follow this program, okay, and provide these services. However, let's not ignore the fact that you just said you had to fail for 3 years. What does that do
Well,
to a
and it's
child's
so
psyche? And
interesting.
that shit follows you. It follows you. It stays with you. Or what we're going through with my daughter is there are areas of school that are really challenging with her. And she's been working on this for a past year with an educational therapist that works with younger kids who's been such a blessing. But when she's going through this SST process, student study team process in the schools, she's not low enough. So
No,
let's
because
let
that
these
happens.
children, yeah, let's let these children struggle.
The system has not changed all. I mean, there's many. Listen,
And I understand their
you're
limitations. It's a
exact.
messed up
It
situation. Like,
hasn't.
I
Yes.
understand, but I don't want to ignore the mental health component.
I mean,
And I think it is ignored.
I sit here. I think that part of my success in my life um, has been uh, pushing myself to somehow prove them wrong.
Okay, so that's what I want to talk about because I that you had so many paths that you could have gone down, Lainie. Like
Oh, I
you
went to school with the kids that went down those paths. When I graduated from college, what my first goal was to go back to school for forensic psychology and not for criminal investigations, but I wanted to study the relationship between learning disabilities and juvenile delinquency because of the
amazing.
kids that I grew up with and the substance abuse that was going on and the risky behaviors. It was from a very early age, I was exposed to a whole lot of stuff.
Right. And let's talk about the kids that are now adults, but they were kids where they were going through this and their parents weren't fighting for them and their parents weren't advocating for them, or they weren't in public school, they were in private school. Or what if they were homeschooled
Right.
and their parents weren't advocating for them or like, and now they're adults and they're adults that might have no self-value, no self-worth. They might not even know they have no self-value and no self-worth. They might be capable of doing so many things, but they've never been taught how to pull on their strengths or how to overcome their struggles. And I'm seeing it a lot. I'm really seeing it a lot. And it really, I don't have the solution right now, but it's tragic.
Yeah.
It's really a tragic situation that's happening. And my heart just breaks for the children that don't have these advocates.
Yeah.
So guys, advocate for your kids. Pay attention. The teachers won't always catch it because they have 27 kids in their class.
I mean, what people need to understand is that teachers, when they get their credentials, they get one class in one semester to cover all of special education. So that's it. That's all they get. So I don't want to come down hard on teachers. I think it's the teacher preparation programs that fail our teachers in so many ways.
Yeah, it's not the teachers. I worked in schools for over a decade. People are doing what they can with what's available to them.
Yeah, I know.
Absolutely. Okay, so Lainie, what made it different for you? What happened inside of you that you were, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm not giving up on myself. How did you find that self-esteem? I want all the information.
I think that, like, I don't know if there's any one thing. I think that going to this school, I went all the way through with the exception of one semester. I tried to leave and matriculate back into gen ed. And I went to, out here, we have something called LACHSA, LA County High School for the Arts. And I tried to go for acting. And so half the day was all theater, and then like 3 hours were academics. And that was at the beginning of 10th grade. And academically, I failed completely, even though from 5th grade to 10th grade, I had been at this special school getting all this skills-based education. And, you know, when I say skills-based, it wasn't just the what of learning. I was learning how to learn. And that's the piece I think that carries you on into adulthood, is learning how to do things, what the process is. It's not really always about the product. It's how did you get there? And so we all thought I was going to be successful, and I wasn't. So I was retested, and it turned out that I also had ADHD. And so after that, the focus shifted a little bit. I tried medication. It worked for me. It's not necessarily for everyone. I always like to say it's a pill, not a skill. So, you know, just taking a pill is not going to really, it might take the edge off for some people, but I was still getting the education I needed to learn how to do all the things. And compensate for my lack of frontal lobe. And then I got into college. I got into my first choice college. And that to me was like, wait, what? How, like that?
Because you have ADHD and processing disorders, it does not mean you don't have intelligence.
See, okay, so this is one of the most important points.
I want to make that very clear.
Very clear. But here's the problem. From preschool, our self-esteem goes from our hopefully our loving families, hopefully that's what you're coming from, into the school setting. And our self-esteem is completely wrapped up in our success in school.
Yeah.
And so, and our success in school is based on certain achievements that are related to learning. And if you're not learning and you're not achieving those things, then you feel small. And so I always felt intelligent, like I felt like I was smart, but nothing I was doing was proving that. And even after 4th grade, or being in this new school and I was succeeding, I still felt small because I was at a segregated school with a whole lot of other kids who also felt really stupid. And we made fun of ourselves constantly. And we constantly talked about how stupid we were and that we had to be at the special school and we were on the short bus and, all of those things.
Yeah.
But in truth, there was a certain level of comfort that we were all kind of together. So I don't know like what the one it after after I started succeeding, after we figured out the ADHD, it was like full speed ahead in academia.
But how old were you at this point?
Um, I was 17.
Okay.
And I started to love learning. Everything started to kind of click, and I was able to retain information. And it clicked that, like, oh, I take 2 column notes. And when I take the 2 column notes and I'm on the medication, it all gets to the little filing cabinets in my brain. And then when I sit down at the test, I can retrieve that information.
Yeah.
So it all kind of started clicking at that point, all the pieces. I always like to say, like, it's never one thing. Like, it's always an accumulation of all the, maybe you see a student for a few months and then they move on to someone else or whatever. I think it's all, it all builds. Um,
Hmm.
and then college kind of, it didn't occur to me to do college any differently than I had been taught how to do high school, which was so fascinating, Jess. Like, I went into college feeling so small, like I don't belong here. I went to the East Coast, University of Vermont. I, I had a horrible anxiety disorder. I didn't even sleep out till I was 16. But then
Yeah.
somehow I was like, if I don't go now, I'm never going anywhere. And so I went, and I remember the first assignment I had with my freshman seminar class, it was to read this article on 3 different religions and summarize. And in my opinion, summary writing is one of the hardest skills to teach a student or just for anyone to do. Um, and I felt like an absolute idiot. And I remember when I went to college, my mom bought a fax machine as my dorm room telephone. And she bought a fax machine for my high school English teacher slash tutor at home. So we were able to fax back and forth. And kudos to my mom figuring out, and I called her and I said, I don't know what I'm doing. And she said, listen, I can't help you at this moment. Is there someone on your floor that seems like they know what they're doing? And I said, well, there's a girl who's in a single next door to me. She's 18 and she listens to NPR. And she's like, great, do her. I like, go to her. So I was like, all right. So I very sheepishly kind of walk into this room and I say, hi. I mean, we had met that at that point, it was a few days in.
Yeah.
And I sheepishly explained, like, I'm not an idiot. I got in here just like you, but sometimes I struggle with organizing my thoughts. And this is part of what I had been taught to do, how to advocate for myself and how to do
Yeah.
that. That was that skills-based education. And she's like, I guess I can help. And so I showed her what I was trying to do. And I showed her an outline that I was trying to create. And this girl went to a very fancy private boarding school on the East Coast. And she looks at me and she goes, what's an outline? And I was like, and then I proceeded to explain to her, like,
Yeah.
organize your thoughts before. And before I knew it, like, I had explained to her what an outline was. And somehow it was like a little bit of a come to Jesus or, whatever you
Yeah.
want to say, the universe kind of shining down, and kind of saying, like, oh, okay, like, Lainie, you might have this more than
Trust
you.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so then it was just like full steam ahead. And it was, there were 1,000% times where I would be angry that what took my friends an hour to do would take me 3 hours to do, and that I would be at the library 10 times more than most of my friends. But then I would meet them at the party. Like, there was room enough for all of it as long as I was really calculated about it.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I feel like I probably got way off the question, but
No, you're great. And I have a lot of thoughts that I want to ask you
sure.
about what you just said. So life's hard, right? And as a mom and as a woman, as an employer of others who are women, and I'm just like, come on, ladies, like you are amazing. You can do this. I want women and I want everyone to know you can do hard things.
Yes.
For somebody where life comes really easy, my son, he wants to play a sport, great. He's doing great. He wants academics, flies through. I'm like, did you do your homework? Yeah, I was done. Like, I did it in 5 minutes. I'm like, how? What? But you know what he's not learning?
Mm.
Perseverance. To when something is hard for him, there's tears. He doesn't want to do it. He's angry. So, not that your path was easy or I'm sure there's a lot of things you wish were different for you, but you did learn to persist. You did learn you can do hard things. And as an adult, I just want to know how that's served you because I think there's a lot of children that grow into adults that don't persist and persevere. They kind of are like, that's too much, that's too hard. I
Think
don't want to do it. It's a lot easier to not work on yourself or not challenge yourself. And it's a lot easier to stay in your comfort zone.
yeah. I feel like I have been uncomfortable so much of my life, and had to push through so many uncomfortable, long-lasting positions
Yeah.
that it I I don't it almost doesn't occur to me not to push and not to persevere.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I
Do you
don't
think that served you though, even
oh,
outside?
100%. Like I would
So,
not change my path for anything in the
so
world.
what do you think that innate perseverance that you now have, what do you think you've been able to accomplish or overcome in your life that maybe if you didn't have that wherewithal within you, you maybe wouldn't have, achieved?
I think it's all that. I mean, I think that I don't think I would be where I am without having struggled with anxiety and feeling small and not being able to measure up to what everyone else was doing. I think all the things that like made me feel itty bitty for a majority of my life are all the things that I think a I think they inform me in what I do.
Yeah.
I think that I wouldn't be able to be the kind of educational therapist, college counselor,
Right.
educator that I am without the experience that I had.
Well, I mean, the amount of empathy that you can bring into your career, I'm sure is
Right.
unmatched.
Right. And also, I'm sure I work with middle, high school, and college
Yeah.
students, and mostly because I can level with them and I can call BS and say, I've been where you are. I know what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And this is only a moment. This is only a moment, and we're gonna have a hard moment, and that's okay. Let's make this hard. Let's be sad. Let's say this sucks,
Yeah.
and then what are we gonna do about it? And we
Yeah.
can say, okay, this is because ADHD, but that's not the excuse as to why it's not going to happen. Okay, it's ADHD, or okay, it's dyslexia. What do I do instead to make this happen?
Yeah.
Not a
How do
crutch.
I keep going and not give up?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And do you feel like that's bled into other areas of your life or it allows you, to raise your children a certain way?
Yes. So my husband and I knew deciding to have children, I think he has some undiagnosed things.
Hmm.
I hope he doesn't kill me for saying that, but um,
You wouldn't be the first wife to say that about their husbands.
I know, I know. I think he thinks that too, because school was never easy for him. He pushed
Yeah.
all the way through. He's a musician. He's that very artsy, fartsy brain. But we had a very honest conversation about what we would be dealing with in having children and what genes we would be passing on to them.
Yeah.
Uh, and we hemmed and hawed over it, because I as much as I appreciate what I've been through and where I am, and I am better for it 1,000%, if that was a percentage. Um, I still didn't necessarily want that for my kids.
You didn't want them to have to go through it all.
No, no. And
It's
it's like
so
it's like
hard.
maybe too much also.
Yeah.
It's like I like when I so
Yeah.
both of my kids have their own diagnoses, which we knew were coming, because that's just how this whole thing works. They
Yeah.
both have incredible brains and are persevering so beautifully, but I also think part of it is because it's part of our conversation. It's the labels, I hear so often that people are so afraid of labels and I don't want to tell them that it's this or that or whatever. I think it's very empowering because kids are not stupid. They know that they feel different. They
Oh,
know that
yeah.
intelligence, isn't showing up on the twos, threes, and four, one, two, threes, and fours on their report cards in elementary school.
Yeah.
To like depersonalize it, to say it's not your fault. Wait, it's this other thing. It's just the way your brain is wired. It's this other thing. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just kind of part of who you are.
Hmm.
And say, okay, so now let's work with it. I think that that's a really beautiful gift. And so it's very much just kind of like, it's just part of who we are and what we talk about. And it's just very normal in our house.
So, I mean, so that means that at a young age, they're learning self-acceptance,
Yeah.
they're learning self-love, they're
Yeah,
learning to see their worth.
that's the goal.
Well, that's the goal, but I don't think a lot of kids, if life, if they're not presented with those challenges in any aspect of their life, and they're not walked through that, they're not learning those skills. So then you go into adulthood or your teenage years and you're like, what the hell? Like,
Liz
this
and I
sucks.
My girlfriend Liz and I, the one who I have this
Yeah.
company with, we talk about this all the time. She had a very similar story to mine, and we wound up meeting as classroom teachers. And she went to
Okay.
Landmark East, and I went to Landmark West. And I mean, it was really
It
crazy.
was fate. You guys were
Yeah.
supposed to be
But
together.
she and I talk about this that when we graduated from college, it was such an accomplishment. And for everyone else around us, it was like a given. We
I
go
had to do it. Yeah.
high school, you go to college, you get your college degree, and you move on. It
Yeah.
was never a given for us. It was always something we had to fight for. So when
Hmm.
that college graduation came, it was like, oh, oh, oh my gosh. Like, did I seriously just do that? Like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like I can't believe what I just did. So it was never taken for granted.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm very big in celebrating accomplishments. I had the most interesting experience this year. My daughter who just finished eighth grade,
No
she
way, Lainie, really?
she's going to high school next year.
I thought you were going to say sixth grade. Oh my
No, eighth grade. She made honor roll a couple times, but there was one semester where it was really hard, and she she came home, whatever, like, and like 3 days later she comes out and she's like, I have this. And I was like, what is it? She's like, oh, it's just an honor roll certificate, it's nothing. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? You know? And she had gotten it like 4 days before. It like made no difference to her. And I wanted to like celebrate this thing. And she was just like, I just did what I had to do, mom. Like, it's not that big of a deal. And I was like, but yes, it is. Like, this is effort. Like, the grade is one thing. It like you have put the time in and you put the
God. Wait,
effort in.
I love that. Wait, I love what you were celebrating. You weren't celebrating the grade, you were celebrating
Oh,
her effort and
it's
her
all about
determination.
effort. The language in our household
I
is
love that.
listen, like you do the process that we've talked about. You ask me for help. We do whatever we need to do to put the effort in, and the
Yeah.
outcome is the outcome. Hopefully, it's a great outcome that like is commensurate with what you want. But
Yeah.
the effort is the most important thing in our household.
I think that's a beautiful thing to teach them because it it has to carry through to adulthood. It just I think so much about a lot. I think about how our childhoods and what we learn, what's around us, what we learn about ourselves, what we believe about ourselves. It doesn't stay
Yeah.
in your childhood. It comes into your adulthood. So being in the field that I'm in, we work with a lot of children, we employ young adults who have done amazing things. And I'm able to see these children and these adults and what, different upbringings. And it's just, I'm so intentional about what my children are learning. Right? Like even today, my son didn't want to go to camp because, listen, he's playing a sport he's never played and he's bruised everywhere. And the mom and me wanted to be like, just stay home, like hang out, like it's summer. But my husband and I taught, and we were like, but that's telling him when it's hard, he doesn't have to go. So he went because that's the message from us is don't go get beat up. You might, but it's hard. So you have to go because otherwise, what the hell are we teaching you?
And this is like the hardest part of parenting, making those like really, really conscious choices and like just I don't know, making the choices that where you're putting them in an uncomfortable, difficult position. Um, I hate this part of parenting.
It's really hard.
So like love it and understand it. But and I feel like the mean mom. I feel like my mom did this so much better than I did.
I doubt it.
But it's hard and watching them uncomfortable and watching them crying and having a teenage daughter and what goes on with her emotions and it's hard, but it's that kind of like intentional parenting, and knowing like what we know on the other side of it.
If we're making adulthood, I don't want to say easy because I don't think it's ever easy, but we're
building adults though.
We're building successful adults that aren't going to be scared and shy away from uncomfortable situations, and they need to be able to handle uncomfortable situations to be truly successful adults. So every time we make this decision, it's not about what should he go do today, it's what are we teaching him as he grows into a man, right? How are we setting him up for success as an adult? And that's what the decision, and listen, it kills a part of me. And I have definitely been that mom without my kids knowing. I'm talking to a teacher, I'm talking to a coach, being like, I need to understand better and advocating for my kid. But like half the time, I just don't want my kid to know I'm doing it.
Totally. I know.
But I still do it. But I want them to feel like they can overcome.
Yes.
As well. Right?
100%.
So, okay. I do want to ask all these moments, Lainie, that it was hard and it sucked or you felt bad about yourself. Can you identify or explain? Maybe it was organic, but can you understand what it was in you that gave you, not to use the name of my podcast, but like the power to persist? Because not everyone would. What advice would you give to someone else? How about this? What advice would you give to someone else that was facing really big challenges that really rocked their world in a million ways, but you wanted to encourage them to keep going?
I mean, I think I feel like I was really lucky in that I was able to lean on the people who loved me.
Support system. It's huge.
I am a people person.
Yeah.
And my first person was my mom.
Yeah.
And she struggled through school. I don't know how she knew to do the things that she knew to do, but I think that leaning on her, but it's interesting. I had to make a shift from kind of leaning on her and leaning into the support she was giving me to learning how to lean on my young adult friendships, like my friends in college. I remember my girlfriends, Lee and Jen, I remember them specifically sitting down with me and being like, we're your friends and you can lean on us. And so I think that leaning into the support, I think was really, that's doing that. leaning into the support that I have. I don't know what was in me. But I think that maybe a piece of it is just who I am and who I was, kind of who I was born as.
Yeah.
I I felt loved, I felt safe, and I felt safe in a way that I could like take risks and then still come back and be safe in those risks.
So I really want to highlight the word you're using because feeling safe
Oh yeah.
is really important. And I don't know if everyone, really wraps their head around what safety means,
Yeah.
but it's emotional safety.
Yeah.
It's that's when, I mean, think you guys, we have all felt unsafe
Yeah.
so many times in our life, but when you have that safety, you really are capable of so much more when you don't feel alone. And I mean, it must have felt incredible to be seen by your mom.
I can't, I mean, there's no way for me to even articulate it. Somehow she knew that like each summer, you're going to go to sleepaway camp. You're going to go a week one year, you're going to go 2 weeks the next year. And I would cry hysterically. I didn't want to leave her side.
Oh
And
man, I haven't forced my kids to do it because they just don't want to. I
no,
hate
I
to.
never wanted to, never. And she pushed like little by little.
Yeah.
I went to Vermont from LA,
Yeah.
somehow like the message I always got was you will be independent, you will not depend on a partner, you will be able to stand on your own 2 feet. Like that was her whole goal in life.
What's her name?
Shelly.
Shelly needs to write a how-to book. How to raise a strong, independent daughter that has self-love and self-worth. So if she could start that, that would
She's
be
now
great.
doing it. She's doing it with my daughter now. It's
Oh,
it's
good.
it's pretty magical
So
watching.
you take notes and you write it.
Right, right. I don't know. She'll say, I mean, even to this day, she'll say, like, I did that. That's great. Like she was just, I think, on automatic and doing whatever she needed to do to raise my brother and I. And like,
Yeah.
we were such different people and like he had his own learning stuff. But he had talk about perseverance. My
Yeah.
brother just had this like tiger in him that he was not going to let anyone stop him or anything stop him,
Hmm.
and he just powered through and made people listen to him. And I don't know, it's very interesting. And
What's his birthday?
April 10th.
He's an Aries.
So am I.
So am I. Here we are.
Yeah, here we are being an Aries.
I
I
mean,
guess it
there's
makes you
like
persist.
it's like tunnel vision go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I had more of the emotional.
Hmm.
Well, he's emotional too, just in a different way than me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a little, listen, guys, I didn't really like buy into that whole astrological signs things until I had my
It's
daughter
a
and I
little
was like,
mind blowing once in a while when you read some of that stuff. You're like, oh,
oh, I'm an Aries. Like I am through and through an Aries. And but I started to learn about it more and more when my daughter was born
uh,
because wow. But it's yeah, it's not hocus pocus. It's legit.
yeah,
And yeah, I think too, just that innate drive. And you
yeah,
said it earlier when we were talking, like, let me prove it to you. I remember when I was just starting my business, just starting. My husband worked for someone else at that time, and our kids were babies, and he stayed home one day because I don't know, one of them was sick. And his boss said to him, "Why do you stay home? Jesse will never be able to accomplish what you're going to be able to accomplish in your career." He's a CPA and what? I was a speech therapist seeing some clients on the side. And I was like, watch me. And you know what? Maybe that was just the one line I needed to be like full force ahead.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sure I felt really good walking away from that guy.
Yeah. I mean, but it really made me realize that um I never was like, I'm a feminist and none of that. But then I was like, oh, but all this shit still exists.
Right.
it really is harder for women. Women really have to do so much more. We have to carry so much more in our brains. We have to juggle so much more. There's just so much more on a
And I
woman's
feel
shoulders.
my girlfriends and I talk about this all the time, just feeling defeated so much of the time.
Yeah.
Just so much of the time feeling defeated and feeling like if I'm kicking ass in one thing,
Something
then
else is suffering.
something else is probably suffering.
Yep.
And like, just trying to kick ass on all of it is, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
hard.
It's hard. I say like balance is bullshit. No one's balancing anything. We're juggling and we're doing the best we can, but it's not all successful. And even if your husband is helpful in the home, there's just no way he's keeping track of every single thing that you're keeping track of for all aspects. And then we go and we build our own companies and we do all these other things and we just add to our plate. And it doesn't mean we can't because we can do hard things,
Right.
but it's a lot. It's a
Agreed.
lot. Lainie, this was so fun. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I always ask people at the end, I feel like you kind of did this, but I ask people what are 3 pieces of advice you would give to women or men, but I like to highlight women starting out, starting to build a career or starting to want a journey of, self-worth.
I think number one is be willing to be a lifelong learner. Just be open to learning. Um, and I think along with that, maybe is a different number two, like be willing to know when you don't know and ask for help,
Yeah.
or be willing to say, I don't have the answer to that, but I'm going to find the answer to that.
Check your ego at the door and allow yourself to be
Check your
helped.
ego. It just,
Yeah.
no one person is the holder of all of it.
Yeah. And why should you want to be? Let yourself be helped.
I'm very good at getting help.
Yeah.
Learn that. And I I guess number three would be lean on your people, know who your people are, and you know, be there for them, and I they'll hopefully be there for you if they're the right people in your life, because the village, going back to ancient times, the village
Yeah.
served a purpose
Yeah.
for everyone. And I think that, like, that village mentality, I would not be where I am without the village and
Yeah.
all the people in it, because I am not an island. Like, I need all
Yeah. And I'm going to just add one thing to this last one because I like it a lot and it's true. Trust your gut about who's in your village. Put up boundaries around the people that should
That's
not be in your village. Trust yourself that the right people will show up for you.
Yeah.
Because when you feel good with who's surrounding you and you're safe,
Yeah.
you can really go after the life that you
Yeah.
feel good living. Thank you, Lainie.
Welcome. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, you want to tell that story?
What story?
The story you put on the questionnaire. I thought that's what you're going to say. Okay, no, go ahead.
No, but yes, I do remember that, sitting at dinner.
Like, are you going to
like, oh,
call me out?
To you. You were like, and I was like, talk to me about what? And you're like, I'm thinking of starting a business and I don't know. And I remember that so clearly.
I was like, I can't do this.
And I was like, just do it. It comes. It all comes. Like, just I used the Field of Dreams line. If you build it, it will come. And it did.
And it's the truest line. And I've used it so many times since then, because every step I've taken with starting my business, opening up a bigger space, taking on more units, every single time you're like, what the hell am I doing? But if you don't do it, it can't grow. It can't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention the next exciting thing is that we started Lila Learning, and we've developed an academic planner and binder system for students that we've been using for years.
Okay.
And it's remember how I do all those workshop for students?
Yeah.
So it goes along with that. So that is our newest thing that's going to come out. And it's just like years and years of like how executive function can really be implemented in students' lives, because so often in schools, they're not teaching, they hand them these planners.
Yep.
Teach them how to use them.
This is so great. And what's the youngest a child could use this?
I mean, it's really designed for middle, high school, college.
Okay.
But the research suggests that if even second grade teachers were using and teaching planners and planning and giving homework credit for having planned out something that's due Friday, but you planned it on Monday, that we have better outcomes with executive function, which is the stuff that takes you into adulthood.
Yeah. And how do people find it?
It's wearelilalearning.com.
Spell Lila for people?
Lila, Liz Lainie.
Love it.
And so that will go live any day now. And it's really, really exciting. So I'm glad that
you have a lot of gifts that you're going to offer the world, and I know you're not done. So you're going to change a lot of lives, a lot more lives than you've already changed. So thank you.
You're doing the same thing. So go us.
Go Aries women.
Woohoo!
Bye, Lainie.
Bye, Jess. Thank you.